Megan, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I saw you share this quilt in cohort, and I've been a huge fan ever since. And so I thought maybe folks in the Nook would like to hear the behind the scenes story. Could you share with us a little bit more about this quilt and what inspired you to do it? Maybe some of your processes?
Yes. So I have been working a lot with, I'm always really drawn to abstraction. I studied a lot of abstract painting and fine art when I was in school. And so I've always been drawn to that, which is part of why I've been drawn to quilting. But we talk so much in the fiber art world and also in our cohort meetings about a lot of under recognized labor and a lot of labor that goes into craft that has a history of being in craft from like the female and the queer community. And so I really wanted to incorporate elements of the figure and the body back into my work to kind of celebrate that, but also investigate that a little bit. So the different hand motifs and kind of iconography and those arms that you can see with the yellow and white. That's really a nod to that interest of bringing the figure back in. And then this piece is also more so than some of my other pieces was really intuitive. Um, I made it in a really intuitive way because I took a lot of pieces that weren't functioning on their own. And so I cut them apart and laid them out and figured out where they fit into this quilt top. Or they were pieces that I had screen printed, different patterns a few years ago, and cut those up because I just hadn't found a place to use them yet. So that's where a lot of the imagery is coming from, and it really feels like the essence of a quilt because it's made of all of these scrap projects and scrap elements. And then a lot of the color is coming from natural dye. So all of the yellow that you see is onion skin dye, just onion skins from my kitchen. The greener tones are from dyeing from coffee grounds. And then the more like warmer browns are from avocado skin. So there's a mix of some synthetically dyed fabric or scrap fabric, but for the most part, it's naturally dyed. So yeah.
One of the things, I think one of the reasons this particular piece resonates with me so much is that there is a strong folk art vibe to it. But it's not just a reproduction of folk art, right? It feels to me that you have taken in so much of what I love about folk textile traditions, and you've turned them around and put them out in a new way, your own way. What can you talk about as far as folk art, how that's how you've interacted with folk art, either in the past or with this piece?
Yeah, I'm really drawn to a lot of different types of folk art. I think that that just, really comes focusing on folk art really comes from just wanting to appreciate the craft and learning about the craft of quilting more and so much more about an interest in the process and not the final result or the final image. And so I've looked a lot at the Baltimore album quilts, which are like late 19th century quilts that are well known in the quilting community. And so I think that those have given me a lot of inspiration for that more folk art side of things. I think it's also partially the appreciation for like I don't want to say the untrained, but the like not scholarly trained or not academically trained artist. It's an appreciation for that that really attracts me to folk art. But then I also look at a lot of contemporary painting. So I think that's where a lot of my own kind of spin comes on it and just, you know, always thinking about like the high art and the craft or like the vanguard art and the trained artists and like what happens when you combine them, what happens when you like think of a quilting as a painting. I think that's how those two aspects are really coming together for me.
You said when we began our conversation that you're thinking a lot about the body, especially women's bodies and queer bodies. Has working on this quilt shown you anything, told you anything, helped you see anything in a new way or a more nuanced way than it did when perhaps you first embarked on this project? Because I know you've been working on this quilt for quite a while. I mean, several of these things are unblocks that you put into this quilt. So have you had kind of a personal revelation, understanding, nudge, I don't know what you want to call it,
Yeah,
about those themes through working on this project?
I think I definitely have. I've hand quilted this entire piece and that's given me a lot of time to reflect. And I think I've realized, it's like so fruitful to investigate that, and I'll continue to for the entire time that I have an arts career. But I think what I've really realized from making this quilt and thinking about what has inspired me to quilt is a lot of community projects, like being part of a community, sharing ideas, focusing on natural dyes, like working with a lot of urban gardens and natural dye gardens. I think just kind of having that time to reflect is why, when I started it, I was thinking a lot about like the labor that hasn't been appreciated. And I think this goes more in a direction of like the celebration of that labor, because I'm around so many people who are doing that labor, who are comfortable doing that, who are happy to do it, and then like share their ideas. And so it really feels like a celebration of that.
Yeah, it feels like a celebration to me too. Of all hands on deck, many hands make light work, lending hands. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could say there. And hands aren't the only body parts in there, but they're
Mhm.
definitely prominent.
They're present.
Mm. Megan, I can't wait to see what else you do. I can't wait to see where this quilt goes in the future.
Thank you.